He never expected to find love again after his wife's death. But as he stared at the photo on the broken laptop screen, his heart skipped a beat. The woman in the picture was the same intimidating CEO who had hired him for this emergency IT job. When she caught him looking and softly asked, "Am I pretty?" he knew his answer would change everything between them. Mark Wilson wiped the sweat from his brow as he navigated the imposing glass headquarters of Elysium Technologies. At 35, he was a single father doing everything possible to provide for his 8-year-old daughter Emma after losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago. His calloused hands and the permanent dark circles under his eyes told the story of sleepless nights spent building his small IT consulting business while raising a child alone. The faded wedding ring he still wore caught the fluorescent light as he fidgeted nervously with his toolkit. This emergency call from the company's CEO, Alexandra Hayes, was both a blessing and a curse. The pay was excellent, but the timing couldn't have been worse. Emma's school play was tonight, and he was already cutting it close. "You can do this," he muttered to himself, a habit he'd developed since Sarah died. "Just fix the computer, get paid, and make it to the school on time." But even as he said it, the weight of broken promises to Emma hung heavy on his shoulders. The executive floor was eerily quiet as the receptionist, a woman with sympathetic eyes and a practiced smile, led him to Alexandra's office. "Ms. Hayes is extremely particular about her technology and quite demanding," the woman whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "She's gone through 3 IT departments in 2 years. No one else could fix her laptop, and she has a major presentation tomorrow that could make or break the company. Good luck, you'll need it." Mark squared his shoulders, adjusting the worn leather strap of his computer bag. "I've handled worse," he said with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. What he didn't say was that he desperately needed this job to cover Emma's upcoming school trip and the ever-increasing pile of medical bills that Sarah's insurance hadn't covered. He entered the spacious corner office to find Alexandra Hayes pacing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her silhouette outlined against the city skyline. She moved with a predatory grace, phone pressed to her ear as she delivered what sounded like a scathing rebuke to someone on the other end. She turned, sensing his presence, and Mark felt his breath catch. At 33, Alexandra was striking, alabaster skin that seemed to glow in the late afternoon light, long chestnut hair cascading over her shoulders in perfect waves, and a figure that her tailored crimson business suit couldn't hide. But it was her eyes that held him, piercing blue and filled with a mixture of frustration and something deeper, something wounded that she quickly masked with professional indifference. "I'll call you back," she said curtly into the phone before ending the call. She assessed Mark with a quick, evaluating glance that made him feel like a specimen under a microscope. "You're late," she said, her voice cool and controlled, with the faintest hint of a British accent that spoke of expensive education. "I have a board meeting in 12 hours that will determine the future of this company. Everything I need is on that laptop." She gestured to the machine on her desk, an expensive model that probably cost more than Mark's monthly rent. "I'll do my best," Mark replied, setting down his toolkit and running a hand through his disheveled dark hair. His worn jeans and button-up shirt felt suddenly inadequate in this temple of glass and chrome. "But I should warn you, I have a hard deadline tonight. My daughter's school play. I'm not paying you for excuses, Mr. Wilson. I'm paying for results." Alexandra cut him off, checking her watch, a sleek, undoubtedly expensive timepiece that gleamed on her slender wrist. "How long will this take?" Mark bit back a retort, swallowing the flash of irritation. He needed this job. "Let me take a look first," he said, his voice level despite the tension in his jaw. He'd learned patience the hard way, sitting through endless hospital visits and bureaucratic nightmares after Sarah's diagnosis. As he worked on the laptop, Alexandra continued taking calls, her voice shifting between commanding and charming depending on who was on the other end. She was a chameleon, Mark realized, watching her from the corner of his eye. Different personas for different people, but which one was real? He couldn't help but notice how different she seemed from the woman he'd glimpsed in photos while recovering her files, smiling, relaxed, almost vulnerable in candid moments captured at what appeared to be company retreats and rare vacations. "Your hard drive is corrupted, but I think I can recover the data," Mark explained, his fingers flying over the keyboard with practiced ease. Technology had always made sense to him in a way people often didn't: predictable, fixable, logical. The presentation files should be salvageable. Alexandra paused mid-stride, relief briefly softening her features before the mask slipped back into place. "Good. That's good." For a moment, she looked almost human, the weight of responsibility visible in the slight slump of her shoulders before she straightened again, armor back in place. When the laptop suddenly rebooted, a photo appeared on screen: Alexandra on a beach at sunset, laughing freely, her hair windblown and her face free of makeup. She looked nothing like the Ice Queen currently pacing behind him, but somehow more real, more alive. In the photo, she was looking at someone off camera with an expression of such open affection that Mark felt like an intruder just seeing it. He couldn't look away fast enough. "That's private," she snapped, reaching over his shoulder to close the image, her perfume momentarily enveloping him, something expensive and subtle that reminded him of rain and jasmine. Her fingers trembled slightly as they brushed against his, a momentary betrayal of emotion. "I'm sorry," Mark said sincerely, turning to face her. "Hazard of the job. I didn't mean to pry." His eyes met hers directly, honest and unguarded in a way few people probably dared with her. Something in his tone made her pause. Their eyes met, and for a moment, her mask slipped completely. Vulnerability flickered across her face, quickly followed by what looked like loneliness so profound it made Mark's chest ache in recognition. That was taken 2 years ago in Santorini. Before everything changed. She hesitated, then asked softly, almost vulnerably, "Am I pretty?" "In that photo, I mean." The question hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning beyond the simple words. Mark knew his answer could either end this interaction professionally or open a door to something unexpected. He saw in her eyes that she wasn't asking about her appearance, not really. She was asking if the person she used to be still existed somewhere beneath the armor she now wore. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected connection, hit that like button and let me know in the comments if you've ever had a chance encounter that changed your life. "You look happy," Mark answered honestly, his voice gentle. "That's always beautiful." Alexandra's expression changed, surprise replacing her usual controlled demeanor. No one spoke to her this way anymore, directly, honestly, without agenda. Before she could respond, Mark's phone rang. Emma's babysitter, Mrs. Patel, the kind elderly neighbor who watched Emma after school. He answered quickly, his face falling as he listened. "Everything okay?" Alexandra asked when he hung up, surprising herself with the genuine concern in her voice. "My daughter's running a fever. The babysitter says she's asking for me, but I need to finish this job and..." He ran a hand through his hair, the conflict evident on his face. The worry lines around his eyes deepened, and Alexandra noticed for the first time the small scar above his right eyebrow and the flecks of amber in his brown eyes. "I promised her I'd be at her play tonight. I've already broken too many promises this year." "You have a daughter?" Something shifted in Alexandra's eyes, interest, perhaps, or recognition of a fellow warrior fighting their own battles. "Emma. She's 8. Smart as a whip and twice as stubborn." A fond smile transformed his tired face, revealing dimples and laugh lines that spoke of happier times. "It's just the two of us since my wife passed away." Mark hadn't meant to share so much, but the stress of the moment broke through his usual reserve. "Cancer," he added simply, the single word carrying the weight of 1,000 sleepless nights and Emma's tears. Alexandra was silent for a long moment, studying him with new eyes. Then, unexpectedly, she reached for her coat, a tailored cashmere piece that probably cost more than Mark's monthly income. "Pack up your things. We're leaving." "But your laptop." "Bring it." You can finish at your place while you take care of your daughter. Mark stared at her, bewildered by this sudden transformation. Ms. Hayes, that's not necessary. Alexandra, she corrected him, something almost like shyness crossing her face. And yes, it is. I'm not a monster, Mr. Wilson. Contrary to what the business magazines might say. There was a hint of bitterness in her voice, a glimpse of old wounds. Mark, he offered with a small smile that reached his eyes. And I never believed those articles anyway. The drive to Mark's modest apartment in her sleek black Audi was filled with an awkward silence that gradually eased as Alexandra asked questions about Emma. By the time they arrived at the weathered brick building in a decidedly unfashionable part of town, something had shifted between them. Alexandra found herself sharing stories about her own childhood, the boarding schools, the distant father who showed love through expectations rather than affection, the mother who had chosen freedom over family. I haven't told anyone that in years, she admitted as they climbed the stairs to the third floor, Mark having apologized for the out-of-order elevator. I don't know why I'm telling you. Mark glanced back at her, his expression thoughtful. Sometimes it's easier to be honest with strangers. No history, no expectations. Is that what we are? Strangers? Alexandra asked, surprising herself with the question. Before Mark could answer, they reached his apartment door, painted a cheerful yellow that stood out among the drab hallway. Emma's artwork decorated the door, a hand-drawn sign proclaiming, Wilson Family Headquarters, all superheroes welcome. Emma was curled up on the worn but clean sofa, her face flushed with fever, clutching the program for her school play. Her dark curls, so like her father's, were damp with sweat, and her pajamas featured cartoon dinosaurs wearing lab coats. Her eyes widened when she saw her father enter with the elegant stranger. "Daddy! You missed my play," she said, her voice small and disappointed. "I was the best tree. Ms. Johnson said so." Mark's heart broke as he knelt beside her, gently brushing her hair back from her forehead to check her temperature. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I had to work, but I promise I'll make it up to you." The familiar guilt washed over him, the constant struggle of being both parents, of never feeling like he was doing enough. Alexandra stood awkwardly in the doorway, witnessing this intimate family moment. Something about the scene, the modest apartment filled with children's drawings and mismatched furniture, the obvious love between father and daughter, touched something deep inside her. The walls she'd built so carefully began to crack. "You must be Emma," she said, stepping forward, her designer heels sinking into the carpet. "I'm Alexandra. And it's my fault your dad missed your play. I'm very sorry about that." Emma studied her with curious eyes, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through pretense. "You're pretty. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? He needs one, you know. Mrs. Patel says he's too young to be alone forever." Mark choked, his face flushing red, but Alexandra laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face, erasing years of careful control. "No, I'm just someone whose computer your dad is fixing. But I heard you were in a play tonight. What part did you have?" "A tree sounds very important." As Emma excitedly described her role as the guardian tree of the enchanted forest, complete with dramatic arm movements that sent her stuffed animals flying, Alexandra settled on the couch beside her, listening with genuine interest. Mark watched in amazement as the intimidating CEO who had terrified her employees just hours ago now sat cross-legged on his worn sofa, helping his daughter act out scenes from her play. "You're good with kids," Mark observed later, bringing Alexandra a cup of tea in a chipped mug that read, "World's Okayest Dad, a Father's Day gift from Emma." Alexandra accepted the tea, her perfectly manicured nails a stark contrast against the faded ceramic. "I'm really not. I've never spent much time around children. But Emma's different. She searched for the word, real. Most people in my life aren't. While Emma finally drifted off to sleep after Alexandra helped Mark give her medicine and a cool bath to bring down her fever, Mark worked on the laptop at the kitchen table. The apartment was small but homey. Photos of Emma and Sarah covered the refrigerator, science projects in various stages of completion cluttered the counters, and a calendar on the wall was filled with Emma's activities and doctor appointments. Alexandra joined him, bringing 2 mugs of tea. She'd removed her suit jacket and kicked off her heels, looking somehow younger and more approachable with her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. "You have a wonderful daughter," she said quietly, sinking into the chair across from him. "She's my whole world," Mark replied, not looking up from the screen. "After Sarah died, Emma was the only reason I got out of bed each morning." He paused, his fingers stilling on the keyboard. "She has her mother's smile and her curiosity. Sometimes it hurts to look at her, but mostly it's a gift. I can't imagine how hard that must have been." Alexandra's voice was gentle, all traces of the corporate shark gone. "Losing someone you love like that." Mark finally looked up, surprised by her tone. "It changes you. Makes you realize what matters." He studied her face, seeing past the perfect makeup to the shadows under her eyes and the tension in her jaw. "You look tired." "Not in the presentation, I mean. In general." No one had dared speak to Alexandra so directly in years. She should have been offended, but instead found herself answering honestly. "I am tired. Bone-deep tired. My father built this company from nothing. When he died suddenly last year, I inherited not just his business but his enemies. The board thinks I'm too young, too female, too emotional to lead. Tomorrow's presentation is my last chance to prove them wrong." "Is that why you asked if you were pretty? In the photo?" Alexandra looked down at her tea, vulnerability crossing her face. "Sometimes I wonder if I've lost myself completely in trying to be what everyone expects. That photo was taken by someone I thought loved me. 2 weeks later, he sold stories about me to the tabloids." Her voice hardened. "Lesson learned. For what it's worth," Mark said carefully, "I think you're stronger than you realize. And Emma clearly thinks you're amazing." A small smile touched Alexandra's lips. "Your daughter has good taste." The moment was interrupted by Emma calling out in her sleep. Mark excused himself to check on her, leaving Alexandra alone with her thoughts. She wandered to the living room, looking at the family photos on the wall. Mark and a beautiful woman with Emma's smile, the 3 of them laughing on a beach. A life built on love rather than ambition. Something she'd never allowed herself to want. If this story of unexpected connection is touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional journeys that remind us how love can find us in the most unexpected places. When Mark returned, he found Alexandra standing by the window, staring out at the city lights. "She's asking for you," he said, surprised. "Would you mind?" Alexandra looked startled but followed him to Emma's room. The little girl was half awake, clutching her stuffed rabbit that had clearly seen better days. "Alexandra? Will you tell me a story? Daddy's stories are boring. All about princesses who save themselves." "Hey!" Mark protested with a laugh. "I thought you liked those stories." "I do, but sometimes the princess wants to be saved." "Just a little bit," Emma said with the wisdom of childhood. "And then she can save him back." Alexandra hesitated, then sat on the edge of the bed. Her designer clothes looked out of place against Emma's galaxy-patterned bedspread, but her expression was soft as she tucked the blanket around the little girl. "Once upon a time," she began softly, "there was a princess who forgot how to smile." Mark watched from the doorway as Alexandra wove a tale about a princess who built walls around her heart until a brave knight and his daughter reminded her what was truly important in life. As she spoke, her voice grew more animated, her hands gesturing expressively, all traces of the corporate mask gone. By the time she finished, Emma was asleep again, and Alexandra's eyes were suspiciously bright. That was quite a story, Mark said as they returned to the kitchen. I didn't take you for a storyteller. My mother used to tell me stories before she left, Alexandra admitted, wrapping her arms around herself as if suddenly cold. I haven't thought about them. Left? When I was 10. She decided corporate life and family didn't mix. My father raised me to be tough, to never show weakness. She shook her head, a strand of hair falling across her face. I swore I'd never be vulnerable like that again. Look how well that turned out. She gestured to herself with a self-deprecating smile. And yet here you are, telling bedtime stories to a stranger's child. Alexandra smiled ruefully. Apparently your daughter is very persuasive. She reminds me of myself, before. She trailed off, looking around the apartment. You've built something real here, Mark. Something that matters. As the night deepened, they talked, really talked, about their lives, their struggles, their dreams. Mark spoke of his grief, of raising Emma alone, of his passion for technology that had become merely a means to survive. He told her about the app he'd been developing to help single parents connect with resources and support, a project abandoned when bills became more pressing than dreams. Alexandra revealed the loneliness of leadership, the pressure of living up to her father's legacy, the emptiness of success without anyone to share it with. She described the panic attacks she hid from her board, the sleepless nights wondering if she was destroying her father's company, the dates that ended when men discovered she wouldn't give up her career for them. I have a confession, she said, twirling her empty teacup between her fingers. I knew who you were before I hired you. Your reputation in the tech community is impressive. People say you can fix anything. Mark raised an eyebrow. Except my own life, apparently. I don't know, Alexandra said thoughtfully. You seem to be doing a pretty good job with what matters. Emma is extraordinary. Why did you really bring me here tonight? Mark finally asked. You could have found another IT specialist. You have an entire company at your dispose.